Yo, what is up guys, and welcome to today's JAwedude discussion. Now, today's video is a little bit different from the usual discussion video. It's actually more of a reacting video, and I'm going to react to this video called How to Make a Good Layout by JAwedude, and I'll just be discussing what I agree on, what I don't agree on, and to just kind of give feedback and a little bit of my own ideas on the whole concept. So that said, let's hop right into it.
A layout is considered as the skeleton of the level itself. It uses practically no decoration and most of the blocks are, you guessed it, basic. Even though it seems simple, making a layout is very important. Indeed, it helps you visualize where you have to put decoration and to see if the level is enjoyable or not. Plus, a layout has many criteria that can be judged on: the song, the sync, the structures, the visuals, and finally, the most important of all, the gameplay. Now that you know what is a layout, let's move on to the criteria.
Alright, so nothing really wrong there, that's all true, that's all what a layout is. So let's
Before
get
creating,
on.
you must choose a song that's good and you don't get annoyed to, which can involve into a lack of inspiration. Most songs on Newgrounds.
For some people that's different. I know myself, like I personally, if I like a song, I'm not gonna get annoyed by it, no matter how much I'm working on the gameplay, playtesting the gameplay, creating deco for the gameplay. Throughout the whole process of the level, even verifying, I never really get sick of a song if I like it. So, but if you do get sick of songs as you're playing through and making the gameplay, definitely try to pick a song that you will get less annoyed to. But other than that, yeah, so far all true.
Are very cool, but you don't have the permission to use it in a level. Though, if you choose a song that's very good and you can use it in Geometry Dash, the chances for the song to be overused are extremely high. At this point,
I slightly disagree with that. There are so many songs that aren't used, and even if they are really used, like you can always bring back a song that hasn't been popular in a while and reuse it and put your own spin on the way the song was used. Make your own level very different from what other people had made with the song in the past. Some good examples are 1.9. there was a ton of songs that were constantly being used, but many of them have been reused and better levels have come out of the reuse of those songs. Just one of those things where, because of the way that deco and gameplay evolve over time, you're going to have something different to bring to the table. Plus, people won't have heard the song in a while, so they're not going to immediately be like, oh, they're using an overused song, because if the last time that song had a rated level was a year ago, well, you might be bringing something new to the table by reusing it. There's also plenty of new songs constantly being made. Boom Kitty had a new song come out yesterday. Cannon Blade, for example, had a song that came out 2 months ago that still doesn't have a featured level of it. There's plenty of songs to choose from that aren't overused, and so you have plenty of options, really.
if you want to be more original, you might go for an NONG song that you like on YouTube, like I did for Godzilla.
So nongs are a little bit of a weird topic. I don't particularly like the idea of people using nongs, which are not on Newgrounds songs, because it's just one of those things where it's inconvenient for a lot of people. Like he's about to talk about, if you don't know how to replace the song, well, there's tons of people who don't, but even if you do, like, it's just very inconvenient to have to go outside of Geometry Dash, download the song, put it into Geometry Dash, and then play the level. It's so much more convenient to just have a song that's on Newgrounds that you can immediately download and start playing. Now, there are some cases where not on Newgrounds songs aren't a terrible option, and if you are going to use a not on Newgrounds song, it's very important that you find a song that is on Newgrounds that syncs just almost as well as the original song does. That way, people who can't get the not on Newgrounds song still have something to play the level with. For the most part, I feel like levels that are made using not on Newgrounds songs are less likely to get rated unless you have a replacement song and it's a really good level. But for the most part, because of availability, it's kind of not recommended to use not on Newgrounds songs. But if you're just making a layout for the fun of it, do whatever you want really. But if you're trying to actually, decorate and make a level out of it, it's suggested not to use not on Newgrounds songs. And again, as I mentioned before, there are plenty of songs. Even a layout I'm making right now is using a song that is relatively new and only has one level that has a feature using that song. And so you have plenty of options when it comes to Newgrounds songs to put in your level. And as I said, you can also reuse stuff and put a new twist on things.
If you don't know how to replace a song in Jump to Dash, I put a link for the tutorial in the description. There are many ways you can use to make good gameplay. You first need to choose if you want to make a layout off the ground or stick to the ground. Then, start building platforms that rhythm to the music. The more difficult your level is, the more clicks and gameplay you'll have.
So this is something a little different. Not everybody understands this concept, but verticality in a level, like whether it's on the ground or off the ground, it's a very abstract concept that is kind of hard to understand, but honestly, you shouldn't be worrying too much about it, but you should also be worrying about it, if you know what I mean. Like if you're just making gameplay and letting it flow, just let the gameplay flow and let it work the way it works. But also, you can do interesting things with verticality, like in one of my levels that I'm making right now, Breeze. A lot of like the first 15-20 seconds of the level, a lot of the very chill part of the song is very sticking close to the ground with some movement, but then as soon as it reaches the build up, all of a sudden we're going up into the sky and then coming back down to the ground, and then it sticks to the ground a little bit more, and then at the drop sticks to the ground a little bit more. It just, the way a song builds up, you're able to kind of allow the verticality and the movement to show that it's building up too. And those things together really make a good level, because if you can tell, oh, now the song's building up, oh, the level's also building up, and you can see that because there's obviously some things you can do are verticality and changes in difficulty as the song builds up, but those are some sort of less talked about concepts in the layout making scene. Things like that don't have to be used, but can be a really good way of signifying in the level what's happening in the song.
Gameplay is essential to make a good level, because if you don't make proper gameplay, then your level will be annoying and hated. Try to avoid making straight fly parts, UFO spam, trolls, and copy and paste sections.
Now, I don't disagree with anything he really said there. I do think a lot of people overuse certain things such as, jitter clicking, straight fly, really tight sections that aren't interesting, where you're just spamming. And I constantly get level requests where I'm very unenthused by the gameplay because it's not doing anything interesting. Everything has been done before. There's just, oh, straight fly, oh, now there's jitter clicking, okay, now there's a really tight wave, and those are okay if it's just a challenge level, but even then, like, you can make more interesting challenge levels too. So those are some things, but there's also ways to do that in a right way. There's ways to have straight fly but not have it be bad. There's ways to have tight waves but not have it be bad. There's this whole concept of having difficulty but it being good difficulty, and a lot of people don't understand that, and that's why so many people just kind of throw things in that they're like, oh yeah, this is hard, but is it fun to play? Maybe not so much.
This is what's the most difficult in the process into making the layout. To make good sync, you'll need to analyze the song. Then, when you found the melody and the beat, try to make your gameplay sync with both of them and, of course, your clicks. The best way to...
So honestly, when it comes to making levels, I feel like sync should be your top priority in making a layout, because if it syncs well, people will like it. It's a rhythm game, and good sync is vital to a level's enjoyability. And that goes straight along with having good difficulty. If you want it to be good difficulty, you want it to be tight but also have sync. That way, you know, it's memorizable and enjoyable. But even for lesser difficulty levels, having good sync just makes it more enjoyable and it makes it more fun to play. That way you're not just clicking in times that don't make sense. Because if you're clicking and there's not even a beat there at the part that you're clicking at, it's kind of just like, well, why did you do that when you could have, you know, clicked a second later when there actually was a beat?
To make sure you have perfect sync is to playtest the song repeatedly in the editor. The result should be more engaging and fresher.
Now this is very true. Even I do this. Even like probably everybody who makes gameplay does this. And if you don't, it's something you should immediately start implementing because playtesting is vital to making good gameplay. If you only make the gameplay and play it once, the problem with that is you're going to make something that you think is good at the moment, but if you were to keep playing that, you would realize maybe this isn't so good, maybe I should change it. And that's probably a pretty common mistake with a lot of lower level creators, is that they don't play test enough. And not only that, but especially with harder levels, you shouldn't just be playtesting yourself. You should be playtesting yourself a lot, but you should also get somebody else. If you have a friend that's close to you, or if you have somebody you know who's willing to playtest your level, always do that. Or even send people videos and ask for feedback, as I've been doing with my current layout.
This is the final touch into making your layout. It is totally optional, but if you want to upload it on JAwedude or YouTube, you may take this step into consideration. It consists of adding more structures to your layout to make it fuller and less empty. Also, you can add pulse, move, rotate triggers, whatever you want. Don't forget it must be a layout though.
So all of that's really true. Like, good structures actually help a lot in a layout. In my level Breeze, I actually created the structures as I created the gameplay, and I created all the fake paths because it's a retention-esque level. I created all the fake paths as I created the gameplay until I got further on in the level and stopped caring and just decided, well, I can make it later. But even making it later is still technically kind of making the layout. So even if you start decorating the first half of the level, but you're still adding structures to the second half, it's still sort of making the layout. It's just a little bit different. But yeah, and then I don't think pulse, rotation, I don't think any of those things are necessary. But if you want to add them as you're making your layout, it can kind of help get your creative gears flowing as to what you want in your design once you actually start decorating it.
Before making your layout, I made a list of my favorite tricks that you can include into it to make your gameplay less repetitive. These are all of my knowledge and they are also very enjoyable to play.
Alright, I watched this part of the video already. I recommend watching it because there are some interesting concepts. I don't like the recommended difficulty here because these concepts can be used in any level. The only thing that makes it more difficult or not is how tight those jumps are. So if you have this, but you have a bunch of spikes, like really close, like right here you have a spike, and right here you have a mini, very small spike, and this is maybe slightly closer, so it's actually doable. And that makes it really tight, and that would be like demon gameplay. But right here, where there are no spikes, this is probably only like hard gameplay, and if this platform was even extended maybe one more out, it'd be like easy gameplay. So I don't really like the recommended difficulty that he added here. None of it is actually specific to a single difficulty, in my opinion. But yeah, these are all really good different ways to add to your gameplay and mix it up a little bit, because ultimately, if a lot of what makes a level bad is bad repetition, as he actually talks about later in his do and don'ts. If you have, say, like a triple spike section and you're just jumping over triple spikes over and over and over, that gets pretty repetitive and gets pretty boring. Now, it's not always a worse thing. I know Carnage mode has a triple spike section in it, like halfway through the level, I believe, and it's not terrible, but it's just kind of like a break time. Because that level is so hard and does vary so much, that section isn't that bad because it is a little bit of a break from everything else where it's like, okay, you're done clicking in all these weird different ways. Now you can just consistently do a triple spike over and over. Same with idols, it has a triple spike section, and it's kind of the same deal, where it's just like, okay, well the rest of the level is really differing in gameplay, but let's have just some triple spikes here. And that one's actually pretty good too because it has verticality and it moves around, and so it looks very intriguing. And it actually isn't as simple as just triple spikes, as I explained in my last video on how to beat idols. Alright, so now he goes into some gameplay tips and tricks. He does some do and don'ts for every game mode, and I'm going to just say whether I agree or not and maybe add a few different tricks that I would recommend. So let's get into it. Now that's something a lot of beginners do, and definitely don't just go ground to ground. It's very boring. It's very, like, you have all this space to use and you're using the grounds. Like, you have the ability to put structures in and you're only using the 2 built-in structures that the game mode gives you. Like, it's just a little boring, and definitely add more structure to your ball section. He does put in this disclaimer when the level is easy. I don't think, like, annoying timings, I don't think timings in general are bad. It's just make your timings the right difficulty to go with the level. If it's an easy level, I mean, timings should be basically free. If it's a, you know, harder level, timing should be a little bit tight, but not anything insanely bad. And then obviously, like, on the far end of the spectrum, demon, like, this is definitely something that you would see in something like a demon, and this is actually not bad. It's just that it's definitely demon gameplay, and if the rest of the level doesn't have the same level of difficulty, then it's gonna feel off that you had one thing that was difficult and then the rest of the level's easy, because it's just going to be annoying that you have to pass that section in order to beat the rest of the level. Consistency with gameplay difficulty is something that not a lot of people understand as beginners. If you're gonna have a demon level, make it demon throughout. If you're gonna have an easy level, make it easy throughout. If you make any difficulty, make it that difficulty throughout, which is why balancing is so important in this game, and why playtesting is so important to make sure that you get that balancing done. And I'd even say maybe mess around with purposely playing the level wrong, so that you can see, okay, if I click this late, do I die? If yes, is that something people are gonna do? Is that something that I don't want because the difficulty is not supposed to be hard? Well, let's widen this gap a little bit so this timing's not so hard. This is kind of a coverall, like, all your gameplay should be diverse. It shouldn't be too repetitive. If it's repetitive, it gets boring. That's just basically how it works. You can have good repetitive gameplay, but it can't go on for long amounts of time. If it's 10 seconds worth of triple spikes and it's in carnage mode, fine. If it's 10 seconds worth of triple spikes and it's in a 1 minute long level, maybe don't do that. Now, I don't think straight fly is bad. I do think we are, at our current point in the GD community, we are kind of straying away from straight fly in a lot of cases, because there's more interesting and more diverse, more hard gameplay. In Accu, there's only one ship section. In Prismatic Haze, there's ship sections, but none of it is straight fly, it's tight ship. There's a difference between straight fly and tight ship, because in tight ships, there can still be movement. In straight fly, you're going in a line, which can get pretty boring. Now, straight fly isn't bad. I do think it has its place, but it's definitely not something to overuse, and it's definitely something to understand where the right place to use it is. And that's something you kind of just have to play levels and figure out for yourself. I can't really explain, hey, at this part of the song, yes, straight fly works. At this part of the song, no, straight fly doesn't work. So it may not even be the song, it's just, did you vary the gameplay enough before the straight fly, and is the straight fly short enough that it's not annoying? Because in long corridors like this, it gets really annoying and really boring. Now, I don't 100% agree with this. I do think if all you're doing in a ship is hitting orbs, maybe think of a different game mode to use, as in like cube, robot, ball. Even then, this is kind of a coverall too, because in any game mode, too many orbs is a bad thing. You don't want it to only be orbs. You want to vary the gameplay. And ship is a mode where you don't need orbs. You can just fly. Orbs are fun, and I actually love orbs in ship modes, but there's usually a good amount leading up to hitting an orb that isn't an orb. Like if it's just orb after orb after orb, that's obviously bad. Alright, that's good. I wouldn't disagree with that. Curved gameplay, that's pretty interesting too. Regular basic gameplay, I don't know why it's called that, but yeah, that section didn't look bad. Alright, now this is by far one of my least favorite things to see in a challenge level or a layout, is jitter clicking, because it's just not fun to me. My max CPS, clicks per second, is 9, and I'm also only on 144 hertz, so jitter clicking is really hard for me, and I don't enjoy it at all. If you're gonna put jitter clicking, make it a short section, or make it, you know, make it something that doesn't take a long time. Having a spam section in a level, if it's very brief, is a lot better than if you have just a long corridor again. It's all about repetition being very boring, and also a lot of people can't click this fast for this long of an amount of time like myself. So it's just kind of something to keep in mind, that a lot of people don't like jitter clicking. The people who do are usually people who have high clicks per second, so they don't find it difficult. So they're just like, oh, it's a jitter click section, I can do this. But it doesn't provide anything interesting for the level if it's a long section like this. It's actually just kind of there, and it's not fun. Now, I somewhat disagree with this. I think Flappy Bird type UFO isn't the worst thing ever. If it's in a like easy level, it's not that bad. But it's also in this category where it's like you could be moving these so that they're not directly above each other. You could even, like, you know, make it so there's one right here, make it so it comes up a little higher. Like, you can add more structure to this and make it look more interesting for one thing, and make it play out a little better. Alright, he's kind of lacking in ideas for UFO gameplay, but definitely think of UFO like Cube, except you can jump midair, and it has slightly different physics. I actually love using orbs in UFO sections, because I love using orbs in Cube sections too. They're very similar game modes, it's just that one is midair jumping without the usage of orbs, and one is having to jump off the ground and orbs. So they're very similar in that way, but they also are different, so just keep that in mind. UFO also has the ability to hit ceilings without dying, unlike cube, which you actually have to add a specific block, which I believe is like the J block or something, in order to prevent a cube from dying when it jumps. Again, and he doesn't really iterate on this at all, but all the bad gameplay he shows tends to just be something repetitive and boring. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's fair. If you're gonna do this, at least like add, you know, a block here and put the spike on it. That way it's not something that can be done with ball, but even then this is the same as the last one where it was still too repetitive. Platforms on different height, that's actually really good. Auto jumps, those are good. I actually really love slopes with Spider. It's actually a lot of fun to make slope sections with Spider, and it makes for some interesting structures too. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone by making a slope spider section. Now, just because I said that, don't everyone go and start using slopes in your spider section, and also don't make every spider section slopes. You understand what I mean when I say it can be something to think about, is using slopes in a spider section or a ball section, and just using slopes in general. Slopes are something that are a little underused, but if you use them and put them in your level, you can actually vary up your gameplay a lot just by using slopes in somewhere that you wouldn't usually use slopes. That said, slopes also have some weird mechanics that make it so that there's hertz bugs, so be careful with them and make sure to playtest across different FPSs. That way you don't end up having a bug in your level that makes it impossible on a different refresh rate or different FPS. Yeah, again, repetitive gameplay, bad. The past one, that was just really tight and repetitive, again, bad. Having a short section that's like consistent clicking, maybe not so bad because it kind of shows some skill, but again, it's not interesting. Alright, again, that was some pretty good gameplay. It moved around. It used its space very well. Usage of space is just very important in any game mode. Use the space that you're given as well as you can, and use it in a way that works with the song, as I said before. I actually also think that using portals and blue orbs, and maybe even some toggle orbs in a wave section can be fun, as I've done in my current layout that I'm making. Okay, this is very true. A lot of people just say, okay, well, I've been using the cube for the past section, let me just change it to robot, and then the robot gameplay ends up being almost the same as what they would have done if they kept being a cube. And so you want to use the robot in a way that makes sense with the robot. The robot, the longer you hold and the longer you click for, it gets more height. But the more brief your click is, the less height it gets. So you can definitely play around with how hard you want to click on a specific part to give it that kind of a feel. This also goes really well with like if there's like a beat in the level and you want to emphasize that beat, have it just be like a brief click, or have it be like if there's a build up, at the very end of the build up it could be you hold for a full second with the robot, like just as far as you can hold for, that's how long you hold for. Or make it so that it's a little bit of a timing and you have to, you know, make it over a triple spike that also has a structure or spikes above it, and it makes it harder that way. Just mess around with the robot and the way it clicks. And a lot of people don't like robot because there's not very many good robot parts. A lot of the things people do with robot tend to either be the same as what cube can do, or it is worse than having just a cube section there. So definitely make your robot gameplay good, or else people will just not like it, because it's very hard to make decent robot gameplay if you don't understand how to take advantage of the mechanic that it has. I mean, this goes for anything again. Orb abuse is just bad. That's also bad. Should be pretty obvious. Okay, that is a glitch where if you click right as you hit the orb and then hold, you'll get more height, and nobody wants to have to do a really hard trick like that in a level. Even like a demon level, like that's not good gameplay to take advantage of. You don't want to make something that's, you know, pretty close to being very frame perfect, although it's probably not, but you definitely have to click pretty close to it. Now on the other hand, you could do something like have a full click, and at the peak of that click there's jump pads, and those jump pads could switch your height, or those jump pads could switch your gravity, or they could, you know, give you an extra boost at the top. There's some interesting things you can do to add to the robot gameplay. I actually really like slope jumps, but I do think that they have their place. You definitely only really want a slope jump in a place where you're trying to boost how much height you get off of the robot, because the robot, for some reason, at the top of a slope, you can get a bit of a boost from the top of it. Alright, so small jumps, I mean, it's just the same thing as before, where it's utilizing the robot gameplay correctly. It could be medium jumps, it could be high jumps, but as long as you're using the way that the robot works in a way that's different than just putting a cube there, it's better than if you just don't utilize the robot's mechanics at all. Alright, now this is a thing that was used a lot more in the past, and it's not the worst thing ever, but it's definitely something to try and avoid. I've definitely had times where I just feel lazy and I feel like maybe I should just do this, but then I force myself to make gameplay leading up to the drop, and then that gameplay ends up being fun and good, and I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't get lazy and just put a blue pad corridor up to the drop, because it's really something where you're just kind of throwing away that part of the level or throwing away that part of the song. Now in other cases that can be okay, because maybe you want to give the player a break. They've been clicking very intensely, and all of a sudden you have like a, you know, not too long, you don't want it to be long, but a couple second break where it's just like, you know, in Prismatic Haze is a good example, where right after the end of the wave you stop, and for like 3 or 4 seconds you're not doing anything, and then there's a little bit of a blue orb spam to go with the music, and then you enter the ship. And that's actually a really good usage of blue orb spam, because that part of the song isn't really, like, there's nothing happening. It's literally silent there anyway until the rapid drum roll before it starts back into the music. And so it makes sense there, and it's a little break because the player has been clicking pretty consistently and doing a lot of timings before that. It gives the player a small break. Alright, spam, as always, is just repetitive and it's not great. It's just something to avoid. Again, if you have a short section of spam, fine. There's even examples of that with probably every game mode has at least one example of a good spam section, but the thing they all share in common is that they're all short. If they're long, they get repetitive and boring, and that's the key to take away from that. I already mentioned this. toggles, I think it's interesting that he only talks about toggle orbs here. They should be something that if you want to use them, they can be used anywhere, really. They're a really interesting mechanic that makes the game more fun, honestly. It's just a additional thing to add to your arsenal of mixing up the gameplay. Obviously, you always want diverse gameplay, really.
No, that
Okay, what he's saying there is don't make blind jumps, don't make randomly appearing spikes that you suddenly have to jump over, like troll little spikes. It's usually better not to do that. Even like invisible block or hidden path gameplay has become a lot less common these days, but if done right, it's not a terrible thing, but it's definitely something to try to stray away from when you can. So yeah, that's been my reacting video today and my little tutorial on how to make good gameplay. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and if you'd like to see an actual tutorial where I actually make gameplay, please let me know down below. Also, if you would like and subscribe, that would help my channel a lot, and with that, thank you all for watching.